Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmer, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service and jbiztechvalley.com. We have a very, very special guest with us, Assemblyman Walter Mosley of, can we say, Crown Heights? That's the main thing. I'd like just to, first of all, say welcome, but just to tune in our viewers that Crown Heights is close to my heart, even though I live in, I'm local yokel here, but Crown Heights is the headquarters of Chabad Lubavitch, so you're the representative of the international Chabad Lubavitch people. Well, welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you for having me,
It's so good to see you. Now, this is your first term?
First term, ending my first term.
And how have you acclimated? Are you feeling more comfortable? Are you getting through all the bumps in the road in the assembly conference and stuff?
Well, when you're, see, I was a former staffer. I used to work in the Senate, and then I used to work in the Assembly.
For who?
I used to work for
In the Senate.
In the Senate, I used to work for Central Staff when the Democrats were, had
I
their
worked
brief,
in the press office.
had their brief
Central.
moment in time in the majority.
I worked from 07 to 09. When
It
under
must have
Malcolm
overlapped,
Smith in the press office.
Yes, it
So I
overlapped a little bit.
Oh, okay.
And then I worked in the 43rd Assembly District with Assemblyman Kamara's predecessor. So, it's one of those things where you think you know a lot, but then when you become a principal or a trustee of the state, you learn that you find out you know very little, or you thought you knew a lot, but there's so much more to learn. And then actually, this year, my second year, my first term, you realize that you do grow and you do learn a lot more as you
What's
proceed.
been the most challenging part of this acclimation of just getting used to things?
I would say probably getting resources for your district. With the absence of member items, there are ways in which you can get resources, whether they be programmatic or capital funding. But going through that process, it's a very tedious process. It's time consuming. It takes away from your time to actually, legislate, although you do find time to legislate. But it does take some of that time. And then talking to the right people, whether they be agency heads, the attorneys, leadership, or
And
all the above.
You're 45 years old.
Correct.
I see you're married.
Yes.
And kids?
I have a son and I have a daughter on the way in August.
Oh, very
well,
good.
mazel
I'll give you a
tov.
mazel
Good,
tov.
yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jewish, for your
Very nice.
congratulations.
Thank you.
And I just, all the best of health and happiness to
Thank you.
your family. I just was curious, when you got into after your election, and they gave you a sheet of telling you which committees, were there committees that they said that you were told you can't sit on because you need the more senior members sit on certain committees? And
Well, I kind of knew that coming in.
Right.
Obviously, you're not going to sit on Ways and Means.
Right.
You're not going to sit on education.
Health.
You're not going to sit on health.
Right.
These are positions which require seniority and require you to actually know a lot about the pieces of legislation you're going to vote on. So I understand that. But I also knew that there were opportunities for me to get on committees that had a direct correlation to what's relevant in my district.
Which are?
Codes, which we know, any bill that has any type of penalty, whether it be a fine or time imprisonment, comes through codes. So I felt that to be very, it's very rare that a freshman gets to get on codes. So I was very fortunate
I thought that was...
to be sitting on codes. And then obviously we have corporations and authority. And I wanted to get on that committee because of the Atlantic Yards Project and the Empire State Development Corporation, which oversees that project. And I wanted to get on corrections because of many of the progressive criminal justice policies that were out there.
Do you favor the prison closings?
Well, I do favor the prison closings, but hopefully, we don't close them without having a alternative solution to why we're closing them.
Well, there's just fewer prisoners.
There's fewer prisons, but we want to make sure that we have more opportunities for people in general, to have productive lives and to do more positive things.
It takes a while to decommission a state prison.
Well,
Mount McGregor has been closed for over a year, and
it's still open to a
there's
small
still employees
degree.
there.
Yeah. It does take a while, but we understand that the culture that the governor wants to present is that we want to, be less,
It's-
but less of an emphasis on crime and punishment.
It's interesting because I've been in this business now for 34 years, and I covered the Mario Cuomo administration. And one of the things that Mario Cuomo had told me was, I asked him what he thinks he would best be remembered for, and he said building more prisons than any other governor in the state.
Right.
And now his son is the one closing
Yeah.
a lot of those prisons that
His
he's got.
legacy.
Full circle.
Yes,
But,
isn't it? It's really ironic.
like-
Well, wait a minute, I'm sorry. You're also on cities, banks, and housing.
Correct.
just
Cities,
I
we
wanted
know.
to talk about
Yeah.
housing because on one hand you say you're 45 and I say I'm 29. But all right, all jokes aside, I've been in, like I say, with Chabad headquarters, I've been here for 40 years. So on one hand, it's an incredible blessing, you can say, that your area turning into a Lowe's housing is now an up and coming elite housing. So that's one hand is a blessing, and I know I have my children there, and so and I go to Crown Heights. On one hand, it's a trouble because you can't buy a house. It's like, well, that's very nice if you had a house before, and we got a young person and you start off a few $1 million here, in the Capital District for a few $100,000, you have a pretty nice house. And there you can't even touch anything. There's bidding wars, all kinds of idea. So
Yeah, it's funny. It's not funny, but it's
Ironic.
sad that you talk about people finding reasonable rent to have an apartment unit just for their home, their family. You're not even talking about people who want to purchase a home. That's
Even renting is difficult.
very rare that you hear people saying, "I'm buying a home," or "I'm saving for a home." A lot of times people say, "I'm just looking for an affordable place, to live, to raise my family, that's safe and clean and affordable to our own, kitchen table, economic standing." So
But does it amaze you that condos in Bedford-Stuyvesant's going for $1 million?
well, it's amazing. It's not amazing.
Williamsburg.
The same things happen in the Bronx. Same things happening,
But Bedford-Stuyvesant
in
was where I was
Queens.
told that growing up in Mill Basin, it was like you stayed away from Bedford-Stuyvesant. Mike Tyson grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant. There were a lot of, actors and hip hop and, artists who grew up there. But, you just look at this and you say, how would people want to spend $1 million for a condo in Bedford-Stuyvesant?
Well, people
What's
used to
so
say
special
people
about
used to say that about Greenpoint and,
Yeah.
and Bushwick, but many of these communities they're good housing stocks.
Which neighborhood do you live in?
Well, I grew up on Crown Street until I was till 6, and then we moved into Clinton Hill, and we moved into Mitchell-Lama housing.
And
My
where-
mom.
And now you're.
Well, I live in Mitchell-Lama housing
Really?
in
Oh.
Clinton Hill, and I applaud the mayor for getting the city back into the business of affordable housing.
Now the mayor is one of your constituents.
No,
No,
but I
you
have
just
I had no, he's in Park Slope, but
Oh,
I have
okay.
a number of his
Staff
of his staffers and senior officials who live in my district. A lot of
call you
advocates
up and say,
who live in my district.
we need this. We
No,
need your support,
we have
know?
a very cordial relationship, and like I said, I applaud him in his initiative for his 5-borough 10-year affordable housing rollout. Hopefully, that will kind of stem the tide in terms of bringing back some affordability.
How are you bridging the gap and making things work well in Crown Heights?
Well, there's constant communications. I have great relationships with people like Rabbi Kanina Sperling and Richard Green, people who I've known, practically almost all my life because their reputation precedes them.
Right.
And I remember when we had, there was an issue with the knockout game and people being assaulted on the streets, particularly in Crown Heights, and we had a big press conference with Richard Green. It was a similar one we had with Rabbi Kanina Sperling. I talked to Rabbi Sperling about always trying to find opportunities to build affordable housing.
And
I
how do
just-
you keep the peace?
You know what, Mike, I want to interrupt because, one point is just like keeping the peace. It's like that's, people like, and there are problems, all right, there's always going to be a problem anywhere. But really, it's like a war zone. And that really is just the opposite of what's happening. And it's the most interracial, the peaceful neighborhood, and I heard this in the whole country. that there are the black people and there's the Hasidim. And all right, you're right, there's one thing here, and again, the dog bites a man is nothing, but a man bites a dog. So one thing goes wrong in Crown Heights, it's, like everybody gets headline news, but it's not true.
Well, I remember...
I visit there and I know that people are getting along very, very well.
I remember when the Crown Heights riots took place, and I remember when David Dinkins came in, he tried to resolve, he was at a meeting and he said, look, how do we bring these two communities together in Crown Heights? And the Grand Rebbe said it quite clearly. Look, there is no black community, there is no Jewish community in Crown Heights. There's one Crown Heights community. And I think that was apropos then, and it's apropos now. And I think even in spite of the dark eye and the dark cloud in which that moment in time brought that area, that area has been really a beacon of race relations and for our city
together,
and for our state to look at.
And it seems that basketball also helped heal any wounds. I mean, because they had the Hasidim and the black community, members play basketball, and I just, as a symbol, I just remember that
Working
as
together,
being a healing moment.
And I think, like you made it the best point. It's a beacon for.
Yeah.
It really is. People should hold up. That how people work together. That never gets headline news, of course. That there's peace and people working together.
You know what? We're not looking for headline news. We're just looking to just live our lives and to raise our families and to live the way we're supposed to live.
But
as
that
God
should
intended.
be the headline news. That should be, you know what I'm saying? That should be people working together and they're at peace and everything's going well. And for the 99% of the time, everything is well. And that should be really the headline. I'm always looking for the good news over here instead of the bad news over here. So I think that's an important point.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
We work together.
What's your most challenging issue or most challenging time what do you find most challenging about the job?
Well, for that
And
particular
an issue
for this
from the
particular
district,
from this particular area of my district, obviously is the growing development within Crown Heights. We're starting to see a lot of development taking place throughout Crown Heights on both sides of Eastern Parkway. And right now we have one particular project which the community is heavily involved with, and that's the redevelopment of the Bedford Union Armory, which is it's a 138,000 square foot facility that the city bought from the state. And we're right now in the process of going through an RFP process. And there are a multitude of developers who are looking to redevelop that
For
site.
condos, you mean?
No, well, they're going to redevelop it for maximum public use and efficiency. And, it's...
Broad brush.
Well, it is going to be
But is it
used,
business or
it's going to be
residential?
an incubator.
No,
It's
it's
going
business.
to have, public use. It's going to have gym. It's going to have pools. It's going to have, so it's going to have room for startups, room for possibly some community-based organizations to be housed in. But it's going to couple hopefully with Medgar Evers College, which we hope would be a partner in this. We're going to hopefully have some joint ventures of some local developers to build affordable housing, real affordable housing.
That's
with
exciting for you.
2,
huh?
3, 4 bedroom apartments to meet the needs of
you-
all of our
one area?
constituents.
In the Armory, you're going to have apartments?
Well, there's a portion of the Armory that people can't see from the street, which is closer to the Rogers Avenue side. As you know, it spans, from Rogers to Bedford. And so
I
it's
didn't
one
know
city, it's
that.
one city block. So there's a portion you can't really see that does not would not infringe upon the actual main footprint of the Armory, where you can possibly build some
I
affordable
was
housing.
actually in this place because they have the Lubavitch
Yes.
convention every year,
Yeah.
and you need a place for thousands of people. So I know how massive it is, and they really redid it in 1 week to make it beautiful. You'd think you were not in an army. Really, it's a shell, but they made it beautiful. So I was.
So just
really
imagine
interested.
that site being redeveloped and how
That's
much
amazing. Yeah.
that would improve upon that.
Quality of living of people, they need that.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is, I just say, I don't want to pull away from your people. I just say people go there and, you live in the suburbs here and it says, well, there's not so many parks and, for the kids to play around in, but people love, they think I'm crazy. I'm going to show you, what are you living out on a farm? I says, at least you have a backyard.
Well,
there
you
it's,
look at the area, you got the Children's Museum, the Jewish Children's Museum, you got the
right.
Brooklyn museum. You have, you know,
Right.
you have the park. You
There's
have
really so
everything
much,
that
yeah.
you would need, you know,
At your fingertips,
to
yeah.
raise a family, you know, at your fingertips, right outside your doorsteps. So we understand that this is a very popular area,
Is there
but at the
still
same
a-
time, we want to make sure that we don't push people out when they
Is-
don't want to leave.
Is there still a zoo in Prospect Park?
Yes, there is.
A
Yes,
zoo?
there is.
There is,
Yeah, I
okay.
was just there the other day. I was at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden for the cherry blossom ceremonies, and then I was coming across the street and where I had parked my car
Yeah.
along Flatbush Avenue Extension. And I saw the children, the families going into the zoo.
See, on one hand, it's a blessing because I always felt, and you know, people said, "Oh, if I would take someone from the Capital District to Brooklyn to see the Rabbi, what are you taking me to Brooklyn?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, dangerous, like he says. I says, well, it's, you know, you go there, and now it really, and I always felt there's so many resources there
Yeah.
that to build it up, and why should it have such a bad name? And you know, I guess, you know, so many years later, people are coming around to it, and that's the place to be.
Yeah, well, see, I'm an old Brooklyn boy, so
Yeah.
you know, it's always Brooklyn has always been my home.
Yeah.
So I never had that dichotomy of it being bad or being good. It's just a place where I grew up.
Mill
and
Basin
lived.
here, so.
Right.
You've
right,
been to
right.
Mill Basin?
Yeah, I go
Okay.
there all the time.
You have, everyone tries to work out a niche for themselves in the
Mm.
assembly. And I think your niche might be to try to level the playing field with economic inequality.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're?
Well,
is
one
that
of the
niche
one
that
of the
you're-
things I was interested you brought that up because a friend of mine said, you know, you got to find your niche, and I kind of thought about it, and I said, you know what, if I thought I could just find a niche, I think I would be doing a disservice to my district, because they expect me to be well versed on a multitude of topics, because there are a multitude of issues that impact our district, whether it be affordable housing, fair and equitable economic development, public safety, transportation, education, you know, environmental concerns that will have a direct impact on the city, you know, for things that are happening in our upstate region, whether it be hydrofracking and hydraulic fracking. So these are things
Or the
that
watershed that's in Delaware County and.
exactly. So these are things that you constantly think about as a legislator, but you know you always want to make sure that you're well versed on all topics that are
Exactly.
relevant to you.
But you know, there's so many legislators that are known to be this and they use that as a springboard to influence a lot of the other legislation that their district needs. But that they're known to be, you know, Dick Gottfried's the health, the health committee chair for, 40 years, you know, and there were other assemblymen who were just known as the consumer protection assemblyman, or the law and order assemblyman, so that's why is economic inequality what you're trying to create?
It's one of the things that we're dealing with.
Okay, so
'cause
talk to me about
economic inequality leads to inequality when it comes to access to affordable housing, inequality when it comes to access to loans. If you want to start a business up or you want to purchase a mortgage, inequality when it comes to the type of schools that are available to you, inequality when it comes economic inequality when it comes to the type of college or university you can send your son or daughter to. So all of these things obviously have a niche, but they all kind of branch out into other issues and topics that require you to be well versed and have a well-rounded approach as it relates to the legislative agenda that you're going to present.
So are you, let's say education, are you more towards the Common Core, favoring that? Are you more into charter schools? What part of the education spectrum are you?
Well, Common Core, as you know, it's about just standards. So we're all in favor of standards, but obviously we want to make sure when we roll this out, it's done in a very fair and equitable manner, not only for our students, but for the instructors who are teaching our students. So obviously we rolled it back a little bit so we can kind of reevaluate so that when it does get rolled out officially, that the instructors and the parents and the teachers are on the same page. When it comes to education, I've always been it's been my mantra that everybody deserves a fair educational opportunity to get the best education for their son or daughter.
Are you in favor of the state education commissioner staying on? Or do you think he should be replaced?
Well, I don't think one person is at fault for everything.
But he's the titular head.
He is, and he is to be held accountable. But at the same time, I do believe that we have a board of regents that needs to be held accountable.
And one of them got
we have
bounced.
chancellors that need to be held accountable, and we have a governor that needs to be held accountable, and we have the legislators who need to be held accountable. So we in part kind of created some of this by giving so much, particularly in the city, where we gave mayoral control to the city. You know, we allowed the previous administration to do what they needed to do. And now we as legislators need to be held accountable, even though we weren't in control of that process, in control of the department. We did give them control.
Do you strive to be on the education committee one day?
I'm thinking about it, you know. Kathy Nolan's been a great chair for so many years, and
Right.
I've been in a number of meetings of hers and a number of budget hearings, and so she's very, very active. It's extremely, extremely active committee, and
But it's one that more senior members
right,
put on.
right. So I mean, like I
that's
said,
what I'm wondering. Do you strive?
maybe,
to-
you know, you just never know.
What are some of the bills that you've put in?
Well, one bill that I'm very happy to be introducing, or have introduced with Senator Dan Squadron, is our Retail Anti-Profiling Act, which kind of piggybacks on the anti-profiling bill that my predecessor pushed through, that deals specifically with our commercial businesses like Barney's and Macy's, who have been accused of profiling people of color this past summer. And myself and Daniel Squadron have introduced this bill to just bring more transparency to this process in terms of the number of police officers and how they're being paid to work on behalf of these entities, and bringing just more accountability, since these are officers that are being paid already and who have been trained by tax-paying citizens of the city and the state of New York.
In Kings County, there's a new district attorney and there's a new borough president.
Correct.
Now, when you were in the Senate as a staffer, you worked with the guy who's now borough president,
Correct.
Eric Adams. What do you think of him, and have you met with him? How are you working together?
Oh yeah, I've met with both.
I presume that you're going to say everything's great. and
No,
rosy
no. Well, I mean, you've only been in office for 4 months. Hopefully, you can't do too much. But I've met with both of them. I always see them. Borough President Adams and District Attorney Thompson. We've met with Borough President Adams privately, as collectively as a group, I should say.
Of the Brooklyn delegation?
Well, I guess he did invite the delegation, so yeah, it was probably the Brooklyn delegation, although the entire delegation didn't attend. And then I met privately on multiple occasions with T.A. Thompson, some of the legislation that I'm pushing, and some of the initiatives that new initiatives he's looking to push as it relates to workers' rights and labor abuse practices. And we're pushing some legislation that will kind of complement what he's trying to do.
You're pushing it in the state legislature or the
Yes.
city council?
No, state legislature.
So
I can only deal with one legislator.
exactly. No, I just wasn't sure where you were coming from.
Yeah.
So with Eric Adams was the law enforcement guy.
Correct.
He was a police officer,
Mhm.
and then he became a state senator.
Correct.
I mean, do you think he's going to be a law enforcement that he'll be looking out to reduce crime, more so than being just a borough cheerleader like Marty Markowitz was? And what do you
It really depends on how much he, I guess, intertwines himself and his cabinet with what the city council does and what we do up in here in Albany. Because eventually you're going to have to come to the legislative body to make your presentation and proposal, and we're going to be the ones who are going to have to kind of usher it through. We haven't had that type of meeting yet. But
he hasn't been up here yet.
No, but we expect him to be coming up.
Even for Brooklyn Night, he
shortly.
didn't come up for Brooklyn Night either, and that's a famous legislative reception.
Well, I know he's busy, and
Marty
hopefully he'll be
Markowitz
there
always
next year.
came. He was also a former state senator. I
Correct.
don't know if you know that. So.
Yes.
What is being on the cities committee? Do you see that New York City is getting shortchanged, and that they give more money to the state than they receive back? Or do you look at the numbers a little differently and you think that they're getting more aid than the rest of the state? You know,
Well, some will say that we give proportion to our population, and that it kind of evens itself out from a ratio standpoint. We believe that obviously the city can get more from the state since we are the economic engine of the state. While at the same time, we also understand that we're only as strong as our weakest link. So if our upstate economy is weak, it doesn't matter how strong the downstate economy is. We as a state will continue to falter economically and fiscally. So it's really not for me to say, whether or not we should be getting more. It's about whether or not what we're getting is fair, and what is given out to the rest of the state is fair as well. And I think that was kind of the argument with the universal pre-K, that if we want to make sure, if the governor wanted to, have this as a statewide initiative, that it be comprehensive and that it be effective and make the most
well,
impact.
there are some school districts that don't have kindergarten, so you're going to have four-year-olds going to pre-K, and then they're going to have to stay home and when they're 5 years old, and then go into first grade.
Right.
It just kind of breaks the continuity.
Right.
Pre-K 1, pre-K 2, maybe. I don't know.
Actually, I found out about that, and there's really not that many children in these school boards. I mean, it's not New York City, and it's not even major cities.
New York City has the community boards, right?
Correct.
So they sort of set policy and make
For
recommendations
the kindergarten.
for these, right?
Okay.
Well, it's the city council that sets the policies.
Right.
Community board, pretty much.
They have a strong influence.
They have they provide recommendations to the city, and the
But
city can either act upon it or they don't have to act upon it. But they provide recommendations that are reflective of that very local community. Which
Yeah,
they
but I get the
represent.
sense they're powerful, these community boards.
They will provide recommendations.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just.
I used to sit on community boards, and I chaired committees, so they provide recommendations depending on how. And I'll say this: over the past 20 years, we've had nothing but Republican administrations. They were not responsive as they should have been to the community boards. Hopefully, and I presume that this administration will be more responsive. And having worked with the administration, they are responsive to the voice of the people.
What's your relationship with the governor? How are you getting along with the governor?
My relationship with the government is fine. We're looking to see.
Personal.
My personal relationship with him is fine. I mean, I've met him on several occasions and had meetings with him. So, obviously, our politics sometimes don't parallel one another. But really, do you have two distinct legislators having the same legislative agenda? So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're almost running out of time.
Running
so
out of time.
Give them a
Listen,
blessing.
Assemblyman Mosley, this was really interesting.
Thank
and
you for having
feel
me,
like
Rabbi.
you're my assemblyman because you're in Crown Heights. Every Lubavitcher feels that you're the headquarters, the representative of the Rebbe and his headquarters.
well, I will say this: Assemblyman Camara, he represents the vast majority of Crown Heights, but we're all Crown Heights kids. Myself, my predecessor, Congressman Jeffries, Assemblyman Camara, we all started up in Crown Heights, and this is why I think it really has impacted our lives even to this day.
Yeah, I just don't know why you don't have observant Jews running for office for state assembly or senate from Crown Heights. I don't get it. I mean, that's
Well,
like,
we're happy with Assemblyman
Well, I'm happy
Mosley,
with
yeah.
him. Yeah.
In any case, we wish you the best. You're
Thank you,
starting
Rabbi.
off, and
I
we
appreciate
have a
that.
big career ahead of you,
Thank
very
you.
successful, and
Thank
with
you.
a lot of health.
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciate
All
it.
the best.
Thank you.